Welcome to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. In this episode, I talked to Ross. He was working up to 115 hours a week with a demanding job in international finance and spending most of his life on an aeroplane. After experiencing a near-fatal medical event, he decided that things needed to change. And he talks to me about how he found his dream job as a teacher and how he retrained and the massive difference it's made to his life. Welcome to this episode of Midlife Men. Today I'm joined by Russ. Russ, please introduce yourself and perhaps give a little idea of what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So my name is Russ Hoadley. I am 50 years old and I have just experienced a rather dramatic career change, which I'm absolutely delighted about. I think I found my perfect job, and making a change so late in one's career is all not to be too daunting. So absolutely loving life.
Great. I'm sure there are many people listening to this who probably feel perhaps trapped or exhausted or just wanting a change in their job. And perhaps you could start at the beginning and start, where does your story begin?
Yeah, sure. So my story begins really from, I've been in the world of finance and held a number of senior finance roles in a number of different organizations, both nationally and internationally, which over the years has involved a lot of international travel, which has meant a long time away from family, not for any sort of prolonged period of time, any particular one period, but it all aggregates into a long time over, of course, of a period of 10 to 15 years, number of weeks away. So having two young children, or at least they were young when I was working, they're now 17 years old, got 17-year-old twins. I felt at that point I missed a lot of their sort of growing up, and missed their formative years, which is, I kind of look back on and feel that, maybe it was a little bit selfish from my part, working hard, playing hard, and not spending too much time with the family. So therefore that work-life balance was never really there.
How many hours were you working? Give us an idea of...
So back in 2016, 17, I was probably working in excess of 100 hours per week, wow. Maybe reaching 115 hours per week, doing that for a period of a year. And ultimately, it's not sustainable for a long period of time. So something had to change.
And what happened next?
So obviously international travel sometimes doesn't suit everyone. So I got DVT on a flight back from New York, found that I couldn't walk getting off the plane. My left leg was rock solid. And then at that point, clearly, I knew that something had to change. So I had to change my work environment, had to change my attitude to obviously international travel, which was no longer feasible.
And how serious was this? You got off the plane, you couldn't walk. What did you do?
It was ultimately life-threatening. So my whole of my left leg was rock solid and burning hot. I stupidly got in my car from Heathrow Airport and drove to the local Memorial Hospital, which is a walk-in hospital. And bearing in mind I couldn't walk at the time, seemed quite a strange idea. They laughed me off and said, "What are you doing here?" and transferred me straight to the DVT clinic at our local hospital, which I was seeing straight away. So the main vein to the heart was, it's located directly behind your knee, and the blood clot had reached that. So if I hadn't gone into hospital that day, I wouldn't be sitting here right now having a chat, Phil.
So that's about serious.
Very serious as it gets, yeah. And obviously with a wife and two children at the time that were about 10 years old, who got twins like that. And so, it was a real wake-up call that something had to change. So, speaking to the rock that is my wife, Justine, we sat down together and said, okay, let's look at options. So took some time off work, reevaluated where I wanted to go, then went to work part-time in the UK only, which kind of suited the lifestyle. Then I looked to maybe grow a small client base of my own and to work alongside that part-time role, working in London for a hedge fund.
What else did you do? Did you proactively find ways of, changing your working life or your general lifestyle?
I definitely obviously changed my working life pretty much instantaneously. So, the ball was in my court. So I could decide what days of a particular week that I could work, that I wanted to work. So it wasn't set hours. So the part-time role was 3 days per week, but I could work whatever day I wanted to, and not necessarily in the office. So therefore I could work a day at a weekend if it suited, if my wife was away or whatever it might be. So I had that flexibility, and so then it brought a little bit more balance to my life rather than work and no play. It was, I found it suited me a lot better.
And did you feel more fulfilled or, happier having changed your working life?
Yes, indeed. I mean, I'm an avid sports fan, so I played golf whenever I wanted to. That helped me sort of balance life between, sort of previously it was work, working those ridiculous hours. Now there was mixed in with a lot of recreation and fun things as well. So that helped my mental well-being, you could say, and health and well-being. So it's a major step. That's something I will never regret.
And were there other contributors to, perhaps your burnout or your decision to change gear?
The family, probably one of the most important parts, not spending too much time with them and not being around when the kids are growing up. I think I'm sure I'm not the only person that goes through that. That was a key point for me, but also spending more time with my wife at home. So during the time that I have spent at home and then obviously going into lockdown, our relationship has blossomed to a different level. We are in effect best friends and have been for a long, long time, but that's kind of cemented it. So I know a lot of people may have spending too much time at home. It's going to have disaster written all over it. But however, I've absolutely loved it, and we've grown from strength to strength. And as a family, we could do a lot more bits and pieces together.
And I know you've now changed your career, but how did that start?
So back in 2014, both my parents were diagnosed with terminal cancer. So I decided to take a break from work for it ended up being 18 months. But then with that free time, I volunteered at my children's school, which coincidentally happens to be in the same road that I live. So it's quite convenient. No travel times there. I got involved in the Parents Teacher Association, got involved in school trips, got involved in some simple mathematics and English tuition within class and being a teaching assistant, organising social events for the school, the annual firework display, the annual dad's football tournament, for example, and got involved in a school environment, which I really, really enjoyed.
And then how did it?
Yep.
And what sort of impact do you think that had on, your change or your situation, or the way you were thinking, rather?
COVID gave me a lot more time for reflection. So I had the experience of volunteering at my children's primary school. I also had been, for the previous 6-7 years, been coaching football for my son's football team. I'm sure there's many a dad out there that probably does the same. But, I really, really enjoyed that. I got a great response from the children and from the parents as well. It gave me a lot of enjoyment. So therefore, with that and with my volunteering, previously, all that added together, and also speaking to friends during the time as well. So, just before lockdown, I met up with my university housemates, and we did every year. I've done it for the last 10, 15 years. And out of the house for 6, 5 of them are now teachers, which also adds to, you can see where this is obviously clearly going now, but it all adds to the story. One of my best friends decided to change career when he got made redundant from a job he'd been in for the last 20 years. So he obviously got a very nice, sort of settlement package. What do I do? He then decided to go down the same career change path that I subsequently followed afterwards.
So you decided to retrain as a teacher?
Retrain as a teacher. So going back to lockdown, my children were at home. I was coaching them as they were going towards their GCSEs. Field I had been in finance. My field is in informatics. I like to think I was fairly good at it when I was back at school and at university. I got an economics degree. So I found that whether or not my children actually listened to me as much as I hoped they would is another matter. But they came out with good grades at GCSE, which I was truly thankful for. So with all that in mind, so lockdown gave me that time to think. It also gave me time to speak to a lot of other people and reflect. So then I decided to retake my mathematics A-level 30 years after taking it previously. And surprisingly got a better grade second attempt. So 30 years ago, I probably wasn't the best student in the world, to be honest. My best friend told me last week I was easily distracted as an 18-year-old, whereas now I find it I'm flabbergasted to see how difficult I actually made the subject feel back when I was 18 years old. So to lockdown had a lot of positives for me and gave me a lot of time for reflection. So done the A-level, and then decided to do a PGCE in secondary mathematics at Roehampton University, which I started in September 2021.
Great. So you became a teacher,
Yep. Then a trainee teacher. Yes. Yep. And then I was placed at Tiffin School, which is in Kingston upon Thames, which is, as luck would have it, it's one of the better schools in the country. It's, I think, it's regularly in the top 20 results-wise, and a grammar school. It's not a private school. However, the quality of students is fantastic. And when I went there, I was extremely teaching alongside and sharing sort of further A-level classes with two doctors in mathematics. And there's me, who's then decided to go into mathematics teaching at the ripe old age of just before 50. So it's quite daunting. Don't let anyone say that teaching is an easy career, as I found out. So I totally underestimated it.
So looking back then, this journey took years. And regrets?
Yes, I think so. I should have made the decision earlier. So back in 2014-15, when I had time out of work, 18 months, I'd done a lot of volunteering, got involved in the school life as my kids were going through primary school. I think at that point would have been the ideal time to make that change. So some 7 years later, 6-7 years later, I finally managed to make that jump. And my wife would probably tell me now that I'm in my perfect job. I teach mathematics and I now teach economics, and I also coach sport. So being a sport lover, I've been working with numbers and everything else, and had my love of mathematics. It's just a perfect job.
You're a living example of somebody who's doing a job they really enjoy, perfect for them.
Yeah.
May have taken you 25 years to find that out.
Yeah.
But I guess there are a lot of people out there listening who aren't in that situation, who, especially perhaps when you're a bit older, in your 40s, 50s, starting to realise that perhaps what you've been doing for the last 20 years is not really what you were put on this earth to do. So what advice would you give to somebody that was thinking, maybe a lot of people feel trapped financially, or just, unable to decide what they might want to do? What advice would you give people to kind of start that train of thought?
Obviously, the financial burden is obviously quite a real one, especially in this day and age. So, however, there's always a solution out there. So, speak to the people that matter in your life to see the change. And that's clearly it has been a reduction in income, as the teachers' pay has been in the news quite regularly over the course of the last year. But it's working with the people that matter, working with your spouse, and understanding your liabilities in the future, and seeing if you can manage that. Fortunately, in a position to be able to do that. And what I suggest to anyone is that if you're thinking of a changing career later in life, don't hesitate. A lot of people have said to me, once I told them I was going into teaching, or they hadn't seen me for a while, and I realised I'd gone into teaching, said, wow, I've actually thought of doing that before, but never quite had the nerve to actually go through and do it. I always liked to present at work. I was never really bothered by that. All I'm doing now is presenting 6 times a day to the very intelligent students that want to learn. And then also coaching sport on top of that. Why wouldn't you want to go and do that? So it doesn't have to be teaching, whatever career. If there's something else that you really fancy having a go at, and you have the potential to go and do that, don't hesitate. What's the worst that can happen? You can go into something and try it, and then if it doesn't work out, you can go back to what you were doing before, or maybe something different. Don't limit your options later in life.
I think I once said that you should ask your 8-year-old self not necessarily what you wanted to do, but perhaps what you enjoyed doing. And the answer may lie there.
Yeah, indeed. So I used to play football every day. I used to play cricket every day, all kinds of manners of sports, sort of down to the likes of table tennis. So if I could play sport every day, which I predominantly do at school, one form or another, whether it's in classes, sports afternoon at the local sports fields, or even at school doing a little bit of table tennis coaching, whatever it might be, then I am playing sport every day. But then also now, because I'm at home a lot more, and I don't have that international travel that I once had, I'm now also, for me, I've joined the local cricket club, which I'm absolutely thoroughly enjoying.
What would you say then is the biggest difference between your life maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago and the one you've got now?
A lot more relaxed. My friends at the golf club would probably pay testament to that. So when I was working long hours, I was, I guess, a fairly excellent golfer. And now I'm a lot more chilled out and relaxed. And actually, subsequently, I'm actually playing a lot better. So I do feel I'm a lot calmer than I was 9, 10 years ago. Although my children might disagree, whatever I say anyway.
But tell me about your work-life balance.
And now it's great. When I was working recently to one of my later roles in 2016, 17, And then holidays were constantly interrupted. So you would organise a nice trip to Italy for a couple of weeks and constantly getting interrupted. There were weekly, daily huddle meetings that I was told that I had to attend. Every morning, 10 o'clock of a 2-week holiday, I had to be on that huddle meeting because I need to understand and know exactly what's happening and why it's happening. But with that, my work-life balance, I never felt that I was actually away from work. So that a family holiday to Italy, for example, went to Pisa and Florence and stayed at a friend's house for 5 or 6 days as well. And I think I'm the only person in sort of living history that's been to Pisa and never actually seen the Leaning Tower. I think I don't want to say whether that's a claim to fame, but maybe it's a part and parcel of that lack of work-life balance that I had before.
So your career change now, doing the job you were always meant to do. How do you think that's affected perhaps the way you see yourself or the way others see you?
Well, I think when I was working all hours, I found myself being quite often agitated, maybe slightly short-tempered. I used to be a fairly petulant golfer, for example. But then also I was tired, grumpy. I think sort of a good example of how others perceived me at the time was my children set up the family Netflix account and my profile picture was an angry bird. So the red angry bird with the yellow beak looking very stern. My wife says my voice sometimes is akin to Brian Blessed. So, but I didn't necessarily see myself as being that way. But clearly, obviously, with the hours were, you're obviously clearly going to be tired. So it's interesting to see how others perceive you compared to how you think you are. And I think from now, I do believe that I've become a lot calmer. My playing partners at golf had mentioned it to me. Russ, you are a different person. And I like to think I'm calmer, in and around family and friends as well. So for that, I've got a change of career and a change of lifestyle to thank.
At what point did you think this has to change? Would it be the DBT? Was that the kind of realisation in your head that you could change something?
Yeah. I think the main trigger for me, I think it's it's developed over a course of a number of years. So the DVT happened in 2017. So it's some sort of 6 years ago now. I think that was the start of the journey. And then COVID then had an impact upon, as a trigger, because it gave a lot more time for reflection, as I said earlier. And then that reflection, I think, so the real trigger point was when I was sort of working as a consultant in sort of tax and corporate accounting. As once with some of my clients is that if they outsource work to you, then as a matter of time, they will then bring a lot of that work in-house and recruit internally, especially with the change in tax laws that came around. So therefore, the whole dynamic of the working situation was changing, especially from a consultancy perspective. So I found that the wonderful world of UK tax was kind of limiting some of the clients that I could approach. And it was also limiting their approach towards consultants as well. So maybe with then the downturn in the consulting and sort of contracted market, I think that was the final push of the button, which made me change to go into something completely different, to coin a phrase from Monty Python. So that was probably the main trigger, the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle. Then through teaching soccer for 10 years and seeing the development of the kids and the enjoyments and the responses I got, and then also the responses that I got from the experience I got whilst in my children's primary school, all those, and then my university friends, everyone was saying how much of a wonderful idea this would be for me to go down that route. So, so the health issues aside, I don't think the DVT was the main contributory factor, but that helped me change my lifestyle and my work-life balance, which then gave me more time to ponder and reflect upon what I could then do going forward.
And looking at teaching as an occupation for someone that's older, what advantages would you say there are for someone like yourself or someone who's lived quite a bit of life and perhaps done another occupation? What are the benefits of then entering that career at a later age?
So having children immensely, so you have a lot of life experience. So one of the teachers at school mentioned to me, do you think maybe your outside experience that you've gained over the last 30 years, Russ, is not being sort of reflected in your job at the school? So, which is a fair point. So I've got separate skills. So therefore I've got a lot more life experience and a lot more I can bring to the table at school. So, but there are other ways to get involved. It's not just teaching 6 classes a day or 5 classes a day and then coming away at the end of it. You also look at developing the students that you have within your tutor group. You can go on a journey of 5 or 7 years looking after a set group of students. So therefore, my life experiences I can apply to the youngsters and see them develop and nurture them as they grow older and older. So therefore, those kind of experiences I feel that I can offer. And as a more mature teacher, not straight out of the university, then I think I can offer a lot more in that field. And also coming from a finance background, I can also get involved in a number of other different activities at the school. Obviously, but with the current climate that's also been happening with the government recently, budgets are very important within schools and they're managed internally themselves, which puts a huge burden upon the senior leadership team within the school. And if I've got 25 years experience of managing finance teams across the world, then surely I would have the skills then to help and benefit the school from a budgeting, a forecasting, and maybe fundraising for things that the school wants to do in the future.
So just looking at the practicalities, if I wanted to become a teacher, retrain as a teacher, what are those steps? For anyone listening, what should they go and do? Where should they start?
So, the adverts on TV you see through and through, sort of get into teaching. It is that simple. So there are a number of different routes you can go. You can approach a school directly and go through what they call the school director route. You're then employed by the school, and they'll pay for your PGC or your postgraduate certificate of education for that 1 year, and then you've got a guaranteed job afterwards. Or alternatively, you can go through a university-led degree, which is what I did. So I went through Roehampton University as a university-led degree, and you get placed in contrasting schools during the one academic year when you're going through your PGCs. You can look at the government websites on getting to teaching, and that will outline all the different routes that are available to you. And so I was not the eldest on the course. There was an array of individuals that have made the decision for a career change. So on a course of, say, 25, there were 5 or 6 that were sort of in their 40s or above, or then between 40 and 50 or just over 50. So I wasn't the only person doing it. So there's more people transferring into teaching than you'd expect. So although we do hear on the press that teachers are leaving at an alarming rate. However, I think that's been combated quite well in the fact, and the government, sort of advertising campaign on trying to promote teachers. And the government also provides incentives for science teachers, for maths teachers to go into teaching. They'll provide you with a tax-free grant for the year of your training. So therefore, if you are looking to transition, then you still need to pay the bills. You've got potentially no income. You can have a grant from the government, which will then support it. It's only for sciences, those subjects that are lacking the appropriate number of teachers in that field.
Great, thank you. That's really useful. And we might put some links on the site as well. Thank you, Russ. Thanks for talking to me. I think from our discussion, I think the overriding message might be, if you want to change, do it now.
There's no time like the present, Phil. Yeah.
And so, and as I said before, you're kind of living example that somebody that has made that change. A number of events have happened that maybe influence that, but ultimately you have no regrets.
Yeah, no, my wife said it's my perfect job.
Right.
So with that, then I agree. So I'm loving life. And I recommend it to everyone.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate your time. Thanks for asking me. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Midlife Men. If, like Russ, you're interested in retraining to become a teacher, then visit the UK Gov's Get Into Teaching website, and I'll put the link in the episode description. If you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like us to cover in the podcast, or if you have a story you'd like to share, then please contact me either on Twitter @MidlifeMen or email me at midlifemen01@gmail.com. Join me next time when we talk to other midlife men about their stories, and maybe you'll find that they resonate with you. Thank you.